Discovery Houston, we're still looking at it.
That's the wrong screen. We're gonna go to the right one. There we go. So here we go. The very first episode of Course Correction. No launches this week in BOSA Launch Watch Streamland, so we're going to recap what's going on in space in general. We covered quite a few launches so far. We've covered Beresheet Space IL. We're going to get into where that is and what's going on with that. We're going to actually show you exactly where it is. For those of you on the VOD, stay tuned. I will have show notes in the YouTube video. But we're going to cover everything you see on that side of the board right there, along with anything else anyone else wants to talk about. Ready for launch, Sergeant? Oh yeah, so let's get a few things out of the way. The new scene, this is flight control as opposed to mission control. Mission control being the other scene. Mission control is going to be useful for launches.
Fixer's making fun of me.
Launch control is good for helping me keep a few things. One, you'll notice there's an actual 2 clocks running. One is to help the mods keep track of how long I've been talking and tell me when to take a break. That one's in the middle. And then there's the clock over on the bottom right side, which is actually what time it is, Eastern time. Thank you to Permanoob for helping me figure out a program to get both of those clocks running independently and making it look a little bit more real. You'll notice that the screen design was taken from The Martian. Some of the graphics up on the board are from The Martian. I can strip it down and three-piece together stuff. So I want to Riot. What's up, man?
It's about tree fitting.
So this is going to help me present information. It's also going to be a cooler place just to talk versus Mission Control, which is like a great intermission screen, a good introductory screen. But while I'm talking, let me get rid of that so it doesn't play twice. So the first thing on the agenda is obviously Crew Dragon. Crew Dragon launched last Saturday morning. Some of you were here to watch it. Some of you watched it on the VOD. Crew Dragon's had a very busy week. But we're going to start with highlights. What was awesome about Crew Dragon? I have 3 pages of notes along with links, pictures. We're going to be using some JPL assets tonight. We're just going to talk and go through you don't see the clock right there. It's right above my head counting. You don't see the clock moving? It says 3:55. It's below BOSA. It's got 000359. Don't see a countdown because it's counting up. There we go, Dustin. He is old. Anyway, Crew Dragon. Thought it was time of day. Time of day is underneath composing messages. It says 19:02:53 right now. That's so when I look over and make sure everything is looking right, I can tell what time it is. Without having to go once down there in the system clock. But Crew Dragon. You're looking, moderators who want me to take a break should be looking at the middle clock. That's the one telling you how long I've been running this. That clock will count down on a launch night. But for this show, that'll tell you how long I've been yakking. But anyway, what happened with Crew Dragon? Well, let's have a look. Crew Dragon, that's my main monitor right there. Crew Dragon launched. Here are some of the highlights from what happened with that as I flip you over to that one. Probably need to move the no launch schedule out of the way, but for right now, we'll leave it in there so people don't get confused. Not in final preparations anymore. They launched it. I love how this flight suit looks. This is the general overview video from NASA. We're going to get into some of the specific stuff that made history on this mission. Oh yeah, the high-tech gravity sensor did not come home today. It stayed there, yes sir. Let's kick out of that. We'll go back over here. So what was awesome about that was it's an orbital flight craft that is now going to be human rated, that took off from American soil, and it's a big deal. Those of you who were here that night and who've watched the last VOD know this, but it was the first time since 2011 that NASA launched, or anybody launched, a craft from US soil to carry people into space with an orbital rated craft. Everything went pretty well. But this is what happened with docking. I'll give you a better shot at what docking looked like. That was a quick vid, but docking took place Sunday morning, this past Sunday morning at about 2:30 in the morning. So we'll fire that one up. Get you guys over there. Have a look at how that went.
You will endure this loss and learn from it.
Now, the very first part of Dragon that will make contact with the ISS is that soft capture ring. You can see it's extended forward from the hatch of the Dragon right now.
The images from Doc were awesome.
As soon as those pedals make contact, latching pawls will engage and hold the pedals against the opposite ones on the IDA, and contact pins will depress, and we should hear the call out for soft capture achieved.
Crew hands off point. Copy.
All right, so we're at that crew hands-off point. That means we're about 2 meters away. Crew no longer sending commands. Dragon doing everything on its own.
What you're going to see here That's Dragon approaching International Space Station. What we're gonna see is once they have capture, there's your capture confirmed. It wiggles, right? Because it's a soft seal. It's not the full hard dock that they finally achieved, but it is connected to the station at this point.
You can hear the cheers behind us at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We have confirmation of a soft capture of the Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station.
And you're probably hearing some cheers
Houston
behind us.
1, we can confirm hard capture is complete.
And there's your hard dock. That meant it was firmly attached. Basically, the spacecraft and ISS were one at that point. That's when that portion of the mission was complete. Pretty cool. So some stuff happened after docking. Yeah, they tested the seals and things. You're actually going to get a look at it from the inside here in a little bit. But a couple interesting things happened. First, actually, I have an entry vid, so let's show you guys that one. Forgot I grabbed this one. There's an entry vid floating around out here.
Another loyal devotee.
Yes, super dude, it is a full jumper. It is an absolute full flight suit. Thanks to my mom for doing the sewing on it. It's sweet as hell. No, it's what it is. It's what anyone in the military would call a flight suit. So, afterwards, this is the crew of ISS going on board. Now, here's an interesting thing. You're going to notice that they're wearing gas masks. They're wearing full face cover. The reason that was done is because, one, it's standard protocol, but two is there was concern when they were going to open up the hatch to Crew Dragon that there had been a Freon leak. That Crew Dragon uses Freon for cooling. Not every spacecraft does. And there was concern, both from NASA and from Roscosmos, that there was going to be Freon leaking into the cabin and in turn into the ISS. So to prevent any problem with that's a hazardous material, the astronauts on ISS donned face cover, gas mask, and full oxygen systems before they opened up the hatch. So this is the hatch opening of Crew Dragon sometime Sunday morning, because remember, they docked really early Sunday morning. This is them actually going in, getting inside the capsule after it had hard dock.
They're looking great up there.
Houston, station 1-2, comm check. That is a good comm check, and can you confirm that you can hear both Oleg and David in their epicas?
Oleg and David being the other astronauts on board with Anne McLean.
Yes, we have good communication between crew members. All right, you are go to proceed. You have a go in step 7.1.
All right, and so with that go, and you heard 7.1, so that's the next step in their procedures, and that's for them to actually go in and start opening up the hatch. 7.1 is to move in close to the hatch. 7.2 is to open the hatch, so we are right there. So everyone keep an eye out. We should see that hatch opening momentarily. Again, you're going to see Oleg and David up at the hatch and hanging back in node 2.
Hopefully on the left-hand side of the screen, inside the Dragon capsule, we might be able to see some of that hatch open activity.
Yeah, it's really unique to have this perspective.
Spelunking does look terrifying.
On both sides. So.
I don't like caves either. I'd rather be in space than in a cave.
Open.
Just see the hatch opening on the left-hand side. Now they have these fans on ISS.
Dragon hatch opened at 13:07.
They have these fans on ISS that will actually force air down and circulate back out of a craft that's been docked.
And there you
and
have
so they
it.
start
Dragon
mixing that
hatch
environment
is open.
immediately.
Anne McLean made the call. It was 5:07.
And there's your funny note about the stuffed animal.
Pacific.
Cosmic Buddies is the company who makes it. They had no idea SpaceX was using one, and they sold out like within a day, and they're backlogged like 3 months.
About 255 statute miles in the air. So the Dragon hatch is open. You can see an arm reaching in.
This is the very first time that humans
They actually have
on orbit
sourced another product from the same line of like space body-looking things. It's Earth. It's more detailed topography
again, so
on the
like
stuffed
the
animal, and they're
St. Jock,
saying you can buy this one instead if you really want one that looks like this now. And it's actually a nicer one, and it's not selling. People want the one SpaceX used.
Inside of Dragon. Human beings inside the Dragon space.
That's pretty cool. I love how rudimentary the gas masks are. I actually had better gas masks than that when I was wearing MOP gear in the Air Force almost 20 years ago.
ISS crew members inside the capsule.
It's interesting that it's effectively elastic around their head.
And so they're going to use these two separate devices, David using one and Oleg Kononenko using another.
It's
and it takes
very rudimentary oxygen
usually,
system. It's surprising,
for
actually.
The sample readers to gather what they need, and then they'll move back.
There's face shields, and you can see that there's actual, carbon dioxide exhaust on their face. So
module on board the station.
I don't think. I mean, it obviously is purpose, but I think these are designed where my bag that carried my gas mask was just huge. It was big. The gas mask didn't collapse. These look like they're made to collapse down, like they're made to be stored until they're needed. Because at this point, if they've let Freon into the ISS, what are they going to do? They can't open the window. But that said, it's really cool. Yeah, what would they do? They don't. I mean, it's a mixed environment at this point. The moment that hatches, they do have filters, but they don't have filters for Freon. They have CO2 filters. Well, it turned out at the end of the day that Freon leaks weren't a problem. They did notice a smell when they opened the hatch, but
a little bump there.
One, I imagine the air is simply fresher than what was on the ISS. It's got to get a little stale in there after a while. And two, I don't doubt SpaceX because it was a new thing. Yeah. I don't doubt they sprayed something like new car smell inside of Dragon. It looks really nice. So that's them going in to...
And again, if you're just now joining us, the hatch is open.
Someone had a taco when they put a stuffed animal in.
Right now, two of the crew members from Expedition 58 are inside, just taking some atmospheric readings.
Yeah, they're making sure they have sensors out right now to make sure they don't have a problem.
St. Jock from the Canadian Space Agency.
So the other thing that happened during the week, as I kind of paused this video because there's not really much else to see on it, is there was a report from Roscosmos, not only from Roscosmos, not from NASA or SpaceX, that there was an increased level of isopropyl alcohol on ISS after Crew Dragon docked. Neither, like I said, neither of the American space sides reported that at all. Roscosmos was also really passive-aggressive all week. I follow their Twitter and with translations, and it was a lot of congratulations NASA. They weren't saying anything to SpaceX, and it's kind of like one of these things where SpaceX is about to make Roscosmos lose. Yeah, exactly. Roscosmos is about to lose a lot of money. It costs about $170 million per seat to put an astronaut into space on the Soyuz on Roscosmos. It costs about $141 million to do it per seat, per crewed astronaut to go on board in terms of basically dollars per mass. So Roscosmos is going to lose, and they don't have an answer. And the state of the Russian Space Agency is not great. I mean, they're not going to be competitive in commercial space for a long, long time. I mean, if SpaceX wasn't going to do it, Blue Origin or someone else was going to knock them out, even ULA. So Roscosmos is just kind of mad that the first competitor stepped up in a humongous way. It's a $30 million per seat savings. You send 3 astronauts, you saved $90 million. I mean, that's a lot of money for NASA, whose budget is, what, $20 billion? It's not that much. I mean, compared to the F-35, which it doesn't never going to fly in large numbers, and it has a $350 billion budget per year. Just to put the numbers into scope for you, NASA doesn't get that much money. So yeah, Roscosmos isn't happy, and they weren't nice. They were nice today, but they hadn't been nice all week. So in any event, the isopropyl alcohol issue was not an issue according to NASA. And then what happened is the astronauts throughout the week, they did their jobs, they did the normal science jobs, but then they also offloaded 400 pounds of cargo, put 350 pounds of cargo back in. I mean, you think it's a lot of heavy lifting. It's not, right? I mean, it's generally it's mass, but it's weightless mass. They're moving all this stuff in and out all week. Most of the stuff they took on board were everyday odds and ends, like replacement bolts, replacement screws, a lot of utility items in terms of tools. They brought on new clothes. They got replacement clothes. They restocked food, water, basically everything that's necessary to keep people alive on ISS and to keep the structure mechanically sound. Hey, Sanjo, what's up? They brought on board. And then they loaded up Dragon's trunk throughout the week. Yes, it's awesome. And then late last night, yesterday during the afternoon, they closed the hatch. And this is the hatch closure coming up next. Let me get that off the screen. Let's put that one up. And let's make that full screen for you guys.
Historic moment, capturing the final moments of the astronauts inside the Crew Dragon. You're seeing David St. Jacques on the left in the middle, NASA's Anne McClain, and on the right, the commander of Expedition 58.
I'd love to go in there and say Coriolis effect produces hurricanes, and that's why the Earth is round,
in the middle is
spherical,
the zero-G
and just let them have at it.
It was actually flown up on the Crew Dragon after launch and entering into an orbit.
I didn't start where I wanted
on its
to.
way to the International Space Station.
I didn't copy it with the
which they are holding now.
Right about here. Yep.
1739.
So this is the hatch being reclosed.
Copy. Dragon hatch close 1739.
your Stingray Earth, is that you're gonna start that now? Get a Netflix documentary made about you. By the way, on the topic of that,
so you heard it confirmed from David St. Jacques aboard the International Space Station.
Yeah.
First crew member to
all
enter
it does
Dragon
is encourage
and the last
bad
to
thought.
exit.
I hate the fact that it was even made.
Demonstration 1 mission aboard the International Space Station. He called it in Greenwich Mean Time, of course, the time that they are operating aboard the International Space Station. We'll call it 11:39 a.m. Central, 12:39 p.m. Eastern Time. Hatches closed to the Crew Dragon, the beginning of the
hatch closure was
mission aboard the International
yesterday
Space Station,
during midday. I watched it while I was doing other stuff. It was a lot of in and out, just making sure everything was set in the capsule, and then making sure that the hard seal was set on ISS. It was basically this camera angle for an hour and a half as astronauts went in and out and in and out. Every once in a while they'd go inside and show you the inside, but inside of Crew Dragon doesn't really change. There were a couple sunrise and sunsets over the windows. It was pretty cool. There was one sunrise and sunset over the window.
Final pictures taken inside the Crew Dragon and of course on the outside. A little window peeking in.
But that was,
some of the sunlight,
like I said, yesterday afternoon. And then what they switched to last night at 2:32 in the morning was the undocking of Dragon. Well, I mean, yes. Obviously, they make astronauts go through field survival training. There's actually Expedition 59 or 59's crew is going up next week. We're going to watch that launch. But yeah, where they sleep has extra shielding as well. There's actually a really interesting interview on this topic on the Interstellar podcast about a month ago. And I can't remember her name, but they were interviewing the UK's first astronaut, and she was a woman. And she was talking about the long-term usability of Soyuz for, like, going to the moon. And she was like, well, you know, I was only in the Soyuz for this much time, and she was in the Soyuz for, like, basically a day. And she was talking about how she was starting to see pinpoints. And that's an indication that the Soyuz was not shielded well enough. So her suggestion was if they're going to use it for a multi-day flight, like taking people to the moon, it really needs better radiation shielding. So the ISS is much better shielded than the Soyuz is. That's the reason, I mean, there's a Soyuz attached to the ISS, but they don't go in there unless there's a problem. But yes, where they sleep, as Sandra said, is more heavily shielded than the rest of the ISS, but the whole thing's shielded well. The funny part is future stations have proposed that wrap water storage around the crewed compartments and layers around the entire compartment rather than in separate tanks would do. Yes, it would. Any amount of mass in between you and dense mass in between you and radiation is good. I mean, In the Air Force, it's always get behind lead and concrete. That was always, you know, if you're going to be exposed to radiation. I worked with radiation every day, microwave radiation, simply because satellite transmitters put out really focused beams of microwave energy at high wattage. And there was, we were trained on how to notice radiation in you, what precautions to take around it. But it was always get behind something really thick. So Sanjo's not wrong. Putting a large amounts of water in between you and the source would give you that density that radiation would have to travel through, and it would actually diffuse and dissipate as it goes through that to a degree. It wouldn't be complete shielding, but it would be better than thin aluminum or the really, you know, micrometer thin foil tape that they used on the lunar lander. Yeah, rocket equations of fickle mixture. They just mix it in space, Sanjo. Just get, you know what? The next ISS module needs to be a cement mixer. And then you just set up a stonemason, and he just goes outside and starts, you know, putting it on. That's all it has to be, right? But they undocked it last night. After they got the docking done, they got the hatch closure done. They undocked it last night. What's interesting about the undock is, well, a couple things that are
and we have
special about it. One,
you see Dragon physically separating.
That's a rocket thrust
Space Station,
to push that off. There's actually a series of 5 burns that push Crew Dragon completely away. But that first pushback is a small rocket thrust, and it's distinct because both Voyager, Progress and Soyuz both use springs. Like when they come in and are docked, it actually compresses these springs. That when it's released, the springs release, and it's a kinetic push.
Copy.
This is a small vectored rocket impulse that pushes Crew Dragon away. And I find it was really cool that you can still look down inside to a degree. Like, imagine if that hatch was open in a vacuum environment. If that interior hatch is open, you're in the capsule. That's it. It's the hatch which doesn't seal anything, and that one interior hatch protects the crew from the environment.
St. Jacques again. He's the one inside of the station monitoring Dragon for its departure. It's slowly backing away. Everything's looked good so far with those separation burns. Again, as Gary said, that physical separation, that undocking coming at 11:32 p.m. here Pacific.
Dragon departure burn 0 complete.
The burn 0 complete is the first of the sequence of burns.
So you heard us mention earlier that we have a series of 4 departure burns.
4 burns.
Starting with 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. We have confirmation that departure burn 0 has been completed.
So that was it pushing away from the station. Now the really weird part is that nose cone stayed open until about 7:30 this morning. It didn't close until they were ready to re-enter. So this morning, and there's no video of this obviously because it was in the atmosphere, but well, I have landing video that I'm going to show you in a second. But Crew Dragon burned to deorbit for about 15 minutes this morning, and then it re-entered Earth's atmosphere. And there was some really amazing footage of it coming down, but some things first about it. So this, let me get this image up. Go and copy this real quick. Let me get out of here. Sorry for all the clicking, but it's to show you stuff. That should have taken me here. Oh, I copied my colon, that's why. So this is the recovery ship that was used. It's called Ghost Searcher. On Ghost Searcher is a helipad in case the astronauts, once recovered, need to be flown immediately back to the Cape for medical procedures. Down here in this box is an actual medical facility. Like, it's not robust, but if there's anything that needs to be treated immediately, like someone cut their head open on landing, they could treat it right here. This back portion is actually a crane arm that can be lowered down to, hooked to the ship, and then it comes like this and pulls it back on. I have a couple pictures of that I'll show you too. But this is the landing of Crew Dragon this morning. Some interesting things about it I didn't know. One is that Crew Dragon seats actuate. So they changed their actual position in the craft to a landing position so that they can absorb the best shock on impact, but also puts the crew into the correct alignment for landing. And no capsule's ever done that. And I didn't know that was a thing with Crew Dragon until I watched the stream this morning. Yep, Crash Couch is just like the Expanse. It's pretty awesome. But this is landing this morning. I'm picking it up when they acquired it in the atmosphere. This is a NASA WB-57 that was flying around looking for it, basically.
And if you're just now tuning in,
the WB-57 is a sweet-looking plane, even though it's old.
Coming home. This is from a camera on board a chase plane there at the landing zone over the Atlantic, about 200 or so nautical miles off the coast of Florida. We're under 30 kilometers, continuing to descend. The next milestone we're going to be looking for is parachute deployment. And hearing we're now about 20 kilometers in altitude.
I wonder too. I actually have something to say about that later. About
subsonic,
re-entry
so
heat.
Already starting to slow down thanks to the aerobraking, basically slamming into that Earth's atmosphere, causes a lot of friction, and allows the vehicle to eventually reach its terminal velocity, basically.
There go the drogues.
Parachutes are going to kick in.
And the drogues are the first two parachutes to deploy to actually slow it down. It's already subsonic, which means it's basically going slower than 800 miles an hour. But the drogues slow it down even more.
Two parachute deployments.
So those drogue chutes do the initial slowing, and then they're ultimately going to pull out the four main parachutes responsible for really slowing the spacecraft down prior to that splashdown.
You can hear cheering.
SpaceX's big concern on re-entry is that the craft is not symmetrical. The parachute configuration is also not symmetrical, but they were really concerned about wobble during re-entry with aerodynamics. They were worried about the heat coming off the side of the craft. So there go the drogues, they go away, and here come the four main chutes. But SpaceX says re-entry was their biggest concern. They were concerned that re-entry would be weird because of the asymmetrical design of Crew Dragon. They've run computerized tests and said it wasn't an issue, but they said it was the riskiest part of the mission. And this came off perfect today.
Down to the Atlantic Ocean. You really can't ask for a more picture-perfect shot than that.
And this was the part this morning where I was going like this.
Now deployed, it's going to continue
because
to descend.
This meant that unless Ripley provides data that says something was wrong, Crew Dragon did exceedingly well, and that means the next flight, Crew Dragon 2 flight, will have astronauts on it. They're saying the July timeframe is probably not realistic, and that it's going to be late summer. And I hope we get a sweet montage of re-entry.
Just about 750 meters.
I hope they just make a sweet montage of the whole mission.
In case if you're just joining us, you can see on your screen there.
Kate Tice, by the way, the woman who comments on this video, she had been up for like 18 hours, and she was a little punchy this morning. She struggled for maybe the first hour of the presentation.
Deployed and slowing the vehicle down as it is approaching the surface.
Her counterpart got sleep
off the coast of Florida.
So she was a trooper last night.
Continuing to descend under those chutes. We just
also,
passed
product of Penn State.
meters.
I wouldn't expect any less.
Everything continuing to look good via reports to all the flight control teams. Now we're at about 400 meters.
And the thing descends pretty fast still. I mean, that's 400-meter call out. And it's 400.
Just passing 300
and there's your 300 meter call out. So that's 100 meters gone in that time frame. That's a pretty quick descent still.
5:45 a.m. Pacific, and we're getting real
Sanjo will tell you that can't land on land that fast. Playing KSP, you'll blow stuff up.
And we have confirmation that Dragon is now under 100 meters.
Yeah, dig a big hole. Dig a big hole. 101.
So next up,
big dig hole.
Standing by for splashdown.
I can talk. If you ever go watch the Apollo 11 video, they'll say, 32 down at 1. That means 32 meters from the surface down at 1. That's awesome. There was your splashdown. The initial vehicles to safe the craft are heading out there. And that was Crew Dragon splashing down at 8:45 a.m. Eastern time this morning. Dustin, I was in his stream saying splashdown like a super nerd.
That splashdown came right on time, 5:45 a.m. Pacific, 8:45 a.m. over on the East Coast. The teams that have been
one note about loading. I'll bring up some pictures here. I shot them into a Discord channel this morning, so I had them for tonight. This is Crew Dragon being brought up onto the ship later on once it loads. So it's a little toasted. It is a toasted marshmallow for sure. But it was brought on the back of the ship. Now NASA protocol says they want it on board in 60 minutes. They want the astronauts out of the capsule, on the ship, and being checked out within 60 minutes. This is the only part of the flight that SpaceX, quote, blew. And they only blew it by 7 minutes. Bearing in mind that it was the very first time of a real world processing through everything by the SpaceX crew. They already say they know where they had gaps and they can trim that 7 minutes. They were really quick to go back to NASA and say, we can get rid of the 7 minutes like this. We know where the problems were or why we were delayed. They're also being cautious. This is the first use. That is the only parameter of the mission that was out of scope for SpaceX the entire time. But yeah, it looks a little toasted. So this brings me back to what Sanjo was talking about with he would like to see a montage of re-entry. That's a lot of scorching on the exterior of the craft. That's not the heat shield. So I do have some concerns. I want to know how Musk gets permission for all his projects. He got money. We're going to get into Musk and permission here in a little bit too. But take you back here for a minute while we talk about this. So I'm curious about the interior heat. I want to know what Ripley's readouts were during re-entry, because that's a lot of burning on the side and the top of the craft, which means that the heat coming off the heat shield was obviously really hot, but not being blown off to the sides. It was blowing by the craft to a degree that it burned it. And I am curious about how well Crew Dragon's cooling system interior handled that and what the temperature inside the craft was. Oh, well, there you go. Sanjo in chat. This is for the VOD. The marks we see are not actual scorch marks per se. It's residue from the ablator on the heat shield. So it's basically the carbonization of the side of the craft that is part of the residue of the burn. It's not actually heat burning it directly. It's good information. Thank you for hanging out and correcting that, because I was curious about that when I watched it today. So that's basically cooked off and then baked back on a blader, is what Sanjo is saying in chat. Good to know. One other cool thing before we move on from Crew Dragon, and we've been talking about Crew Dragon for a bit now, and it's the biggest part of, but we've been talking for almost 40 minutes about it. Really cool stuff came in from the crew of Expedition 58. This is Anne McClain talking. Station
Houston on 2, Dragon is outside the approach ellipsoid on a safe 24-hour free drift trajectory. From Houston, we would like to congratulate the amazing teams from around the world who comprise of international partnership and the great team at SpaceX for bringing Crew Dragon to the International Space Station. We wish this new asset to human spaceflight fair winds and following seas as it returns to Earth for its splashdown in the Atlantic. You have all made us proud today.
There's a reply.
Houston Station, we copy all, and as Crew Dragon departs the International Space Station, on behalf of David, Oleg, and myself, we want to take a moment to recognize this milestone accomplishment that marked the inaugural mission of the Commercial Crew Program. 50 years after humans landed on the moon for the first time, America has driven a golden spike on the trail to new space exploration feats through the work of our commercial partner SpaceX and all of the talented and dedicated flight controllers at NASA and our international partners. It won't be long before our astronaut colleagues are aboard Crew Dragon and Boeing's Starliner vehicle, and we can't wait. Let us continue to be united by our insatiable curiosity to go beyond what is known, to do what has never been done. We humans are at our best when we are part of something bigger than ourselves. Today, tomorrow, and the weeks and months ahead belong to those who dream big and who dare to explore, and our future in space is very, very bright. Thank you from the crew of Expedition 58.
That's Anne McClain responding to mission control. It's a moment. It's historical. It's for the people that have really been space nerds. I mean, some of us spend a lot of time as amateurs. Some people have gone down education paths that have come close to being involved with NASA. I know one person that's working on something right now that's going to be a part of a payload one day. He's actually a mixer streamer. It's his day job, and he streams at night. But it's a big moment to put a vehicle back in U.S. possession, part of a public-private partnership that's going to, this year, put people back into space from Kennedy. It's huge. Let me clean that up, and that's that. So anything else you guys want to talk about with Crew Dragon? It was the comments I heard all week were the launch was boring. Apart from that moment where the strongback fell away and some of us thought that was the rocket, it was, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's a demonstration. It's the first time it was ever done, and SpaceX made it look really routine. And routine spaceflight is good. I still find routine spaceflight exciting, but it was, apart from the 7 minutes at the end, it was as routine as textbook as you can make it happen. And the testament to the attention to detail SpaceX has put in, NASA helping them fix some pump issues with the booster for collection of the S1. It was really inspiring to see everything they worked on come to fruition this past week, and then to see it splash down and knowing what that means. But we'll move on from that. If you look on the right hand side, the next thing is Space IL and Beresheet. So the very, very first launch stream we decided to do covered Space IL and Beresheet. It also had the Nusantara Satu communications satellite for Indonesia on board, and that's a boring payload. It went right where it's supposed to go, and it's going to stay there until it dies. There's nothing to report on Nusantara Satu. It's right where it's supposed to be. It's been right where it's supposed to be since about 4 days after launch, and there's nothing new there. But Beresheet had something interesting happen. Beresheet is this craft. It launched from Cape Canaveral, and Falcon 9 did release it in an elliptical orbit, and it went out. And then it ran into an issue on its way back. So it reaches periapsis, or its perigee. Periapsis of Earth is called perigee. I'm sorry, apoapsis and apogee of Earth, the furthest point away in the ellipse. So let's keep doing that. And it comes back, it accelerates back. And it gets to this point. This is its periapsis, or perigee. Now, this is where the problem happened. Around this point, there was a planned burn maneuver, and that burn did not take place because the onboard computer, first of all, the craft was out of communication with Space IL at the time. It was a timed maneuver. So the computer was basically said, in this many minutes, in this many seconds, execute. And when it got to the point of execution, the computer said, bloop, and it restarted. So the burn didn't happen. So it went around this loop again. while they were trying to figure out what the heck happened. Why did the burn not execute? Why did the computer restart? And they haven't said why it happened, and that's proprietary, and I get that. But what they have confirmed is that they have sorted out the problem, and they have conducted the burn. The first burn has been done. So the reason I paused that is because I want to take you off of that video. I actually want to show you where it is, because this is something that's really cool. There is a really cool website called Stuff in Space. And you can actually see where Beresheet is right now. This is its current elliptical orbit. And it is actually sitting... Can't get too much further out, but it's actually sitting out here right now. And this is live tracking of the object from JPL, where you can actually see its altitude relative to Earth. Its current velocity. 0.8 kilometers per second. It's on its climb. Earlier today, its speed was 1.2 kilometers per second. So it's slowing down as it goes towards the apogee of that elliptical orbit. And then as it comes back around, it'll speed up, and it'll come back down to this periapsis point again, or this perigee point again, and it will fire again. And this elliptical orbit will get bigger, and the apoapsis point will get higher. And that's the demonstrated, like, we've watched that Space IL video a few times, but they're going to keep making that bigger and bigger and bigger. But I wanted to give you the update on Beresheet simply because, one, it's the first man-made commercial lander going to the moon. And there was some time where we were like, oh my goodness, the computer problem. You know, they were one of the Google Lunar X Prize competitors, even though that's expired. Are they going to get there? This is one of the cooler missions in space right now, especially near Earth space. So it was just one of those, oh man, this is kind of like BOSA's baby. It was like the first mission we watched together. And to have it enter jeopardy pretty early in its mission profile, but then get corrected, was pretty cool. Gilly! But this is where Beresheet is right now. This green line is its current elliptical orbit. We come back and check this next time we want to, and this orbit will actually be larger. The other object that's in this is the actual booster stage from the launch, which is still also in elliptical orbit.
I got another mission for you if you're ready.
That's how space junk gets in space. While I'm here, I wanted to show you something else that's super concerning. Is look at all the junk orbiting the Earth. All these other white dots that I'm not really showing you, like with color, that's garbage. And if you look, you can actually see like this small band. You can see a line here and a line here. That's the geo band, or the geosynchronous satellite band. All the debris from those launches kind of just sits in this lack of a better way, but this tie, this ring, like Saturn's ring around Earth. But all this stuff is largely debris. Some of it's satellites. Like if we go and look at GPS, you can see the GPS system. But look at how many of those are satellite points in comparison to how much of it is garbage. Did his computer get corrected? Yes. Beresheet did correct his computer. It did fire its first burn. So back to that. Nope. Let me go here again and show Gilly because he just came in. So this is Beresheet's current elliptical orbit. And this is its current position as it slows down, approaching its apoapsis. It is a lot of crap. But that's what's going on with Beresheet. We're going to talk about OneWeb for a second. I don't have anything new to show you on OneWeb, but we did watch We did watch Arianespace and Roscosmos. It was on a Soyuz and a Fregat launcher. They had this custom-made satellite deployment for the microsatellites, these CubeSats that make up this OneWeb deployment system. They did finally reach their destination orbit for all 6 satellites that were deployed. There's been some mixed messaging from OneWeb. The original plan was to have a functioning network by the end of 2019, and they've actually sort of pivoted in the past week. And they are now talking that this year will be about production. They want to focus on the production of the satellites. They signed a new contract to put The very first Ariane 6 payload will be OneWeb. I imagine that's one of those big payloads that they're going to put like 23 of the OneWeb microsats into orbit off of. But they confirmed last week that Ariane 6, which is the new Ariane ESA booster or launch vehicle that's going to come out this year and launch this year, they did confirm they are the first customer to go into orbit on it, which is interesting to put that many CubeSats on a rocket, which is not proven. It's proven in testing, but it's not proven in a launch, and it was interesting to see them sign up so quickly for it. Yeah, 23. They're tiny. They're really tiny. Yeah, it is odd, but that's the number that I'm not saying that's the payload. When we watched OneWeb and we watched the ESA launch footage of it, they have this really cool custom launcher. And they talked about the different number of payloads that they could launch off it, and 23 was the high number. It was like the maximum number that they could launch on it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's one on top, but the launcher looks to be four-sided. Like there doesn't look to be a hexagonal or octagonal configuration to it. It looks to be effectively that they are able to launch or release satellites from the launcher in cardinal directions, and that's it. Something, I don't know. When they have more information on it, we're going to come back to it. Again, OneWeb's a launch that we watched together, so I want to keep track of what's going on with it. That's the purpose of this show. There's no launch this week, so I wanted to kind of bring everybody back together and give you an update on what's going on with things. But that's OneWeb, Bearsheet, and Crew Dragon, and we've covered all of that in about 40 minutes. Any questions on any of those things, or anything you guys want to talk about in the chat, feel free. We'll stop what we're talking about to discuss anything that you guys want to bring up as we go through things. The next one is the one Dustin got geeked about. So the next thing is Hayabusa 2, which is actually JAXA, which is the Japanese Space Agency. Most people don't know this because U.S. news media stinks, but the Japanese Space Agency, for the second time, is trying to land on Ryugu, which is an asteroid. All right, man. Well, one, hopefully we'll get back to that, Gilly. Hopefully your foot feels better. Two, get some rest, man. Take it easy, and you can watch the VOD. Just note that what time it is on the clock when you took off, and that's what time you can pick up watching it on YouTube. But for those of you that don't know, the Japanese Space Agency has been doing asteroid landing missions since 2014. I'm sorry, since 2010. This mission, Hayabusa 2, was launched in 2014. But this is the asteroid they're landing on. Ryugu is in an intra-Earth Mars orbit, and it actually has an Earth intercept. If you look at it right here, there's an Earth intercept point in its orbit. Twice. Which means one of these days, mathematically, depending on its elliptical at the time, it could slam into the Earth. But it's not, again, it's not that far away. And JAXA has sent not one now, but the second vehicle to land on Ryugu, collect samples, and eventually collect multiple samples, and then eventually bring that back to Earth, which is really cool. Dustin was talking to me about it, and he was like, holy crap, how did I know this wasn't happening? He's like, why? How is this not on the news? And I said, you do know that they've landed on a comet with the Rosetta mission. But this is footage from Hayabusa 2 on Ryugu. How awesome is that? What it does, it actually goes down, touches down, gets a sample, and comes off, and just goes boop, 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 boop. Now, Rosetta, on the other hand, stayed connected to the comet for a while. They described the original samples that they have evaluated at a chemical level as being pumice-like. So the mineral value of mining an asteroid, I guess that depends on the asteroid, but this asteroid, Ryugu, doesn't look like it's mineral rich. At least not what they've analyzed so far. But it's a little crazy. But that is Hayabusa 2. I believe it's supposed to depart Ryugu this year, December, and then we'll get it back to Earth December 2020. So, Dustin, if you're curious as to what's going on with Hayabusa, one, we can keep talking about it when there's a mission update, and two, don't forget, and you will, but I'll remind you that December 2020, JAXA should start talking about it again when they get the craft back. But that's Ryugu. It's pretty sweet. Now, moving on to everyone's least favorite budgetary subject in NASA. Hubble had a problem. Shocker. One of its cameras, it's actually its most prolific camera, went dark earlier in the week. The advanced camera for systems... I'm sorry, I have this written down. The advanced camera for surveys instrument suffered a glitch when an error popped up. And let me read this. So I'm gonna look over this way because I have it written down. So I'm gonna read it verbatim. One of the most the camera suffered a glitch late Thursday when an error popped up during what was supposed to be, and this is Thursday, February 28th. When an error popped up on what was supposed to be a routine computer procedure, according to the public update from NASA. And this is a quote. The error indicated the software inside the camera did not load correctly. NASA officials wrote an update on Friday, March 1st, adding that a team of Hubble engineers, software experts, and flight controllers were studying the malfunction. What they ended up doing, and you're going to laugh, is they turned it on and they turned it back off again. That is what corrected it, and it's not working correctly. But Hubble is old. Believe it or not, Hubble is a really, really old spacecraft. Let's have a good IT guy.
There's a number of reasons why Hubble is truly a rock star of astronomy, but more so of science. And part of it has to do with the fact that it's just been so extraordinarily successful in both answering fundamental questions of astronomy and also providing glimpses into the universe which pose new questions that we didn't even know to ask because we didn't have that insight. There's also another aspect, which is Hubble is old.
Completed construction in 85. Deployed in 90.
And because we've grown to know and love Hubble as, the American people, in fact, people around the world.
Been around a long time.
Have built an association that, Hubble is about making scientific discoveries. And these discoveries come at a regular enough pace that it's something we almost come to expect, although you never can expect the unexpected, but it's something that we've grown to live with.
Hubble needs replacement. People have heard conversations about the Webb telescope, and that's not Hubble's replacement. It has a different mission. It's a much wider spectrum telescope. It's going to look in the IR spectrum. It's going to look in radio spectrum that Hubble doesn't look in. Hubble's largely an optical telescope in space. There needs to be a replacement for Hubble soon because how old is it? 30 years and counting since deployment, 35 years since final production was done. I mean, it's around those numbers, and it produces amazing images for being a piece of instrumentation that's that old. But Webb is not its replacement. Webb is going to do space astronomy in a different way, and we need another optical telescope. How about the universe is like 13.6 billion years old? universe is like 13.6 billion light years old, and space is 46.6 billion light years big. The math was crazy. Super dude, go listen to this week's Interstellar podcast. It talks about the first 379 billion years of the universe's existence before when the universe was still too hot for protons to form, and it was basically a mess of free electrons. And it will start to account for some of the differentiation in that math. It's interesting. W first will come after Hubble. Correct. How you doing tonight, you Omega? But the idea that Hubble's had lens replacements, it went up fouled. It had a computer restart to correct its main camera. These things are indicative, I mean, long term. The lens correction was back when the shuttle was flying, and that was actually a really awesome repair mission. But the idea is that Hubble's aged, and when W first goes up, it'll replace it. Thank you very much, Sandra, for saying that, because the name was escaping me as I was talking. I didn't write it down. But we've gotten, NASA historically gets a lot of miles out of Hubble. Hubble wasn't designed to be up there this long. All right, so another piece of information, and this one is, I don't have any graphics or anything special to go with it, but it's about SLS. SLS is the Space Launch System from NASA, the new launch vehicle system they're developing. It's going to have Orion as one of its payloads, which is also going to be supposedly capable of carrying people. It's all very much vaporware to me still, until they have a proven test flight. But SLS appears to have slipped again. It's been slipping for a while, and it has slipped again. So the director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center said March 5th that the agency is reassessing the 2020 date for the first flight of its space launch system, suggesting the mission may have further delays. During a question and answer session at Space Transportation Association luncheon, Jody Singer said the launch readiness date for Exploration Mission 1 is still 2020, but did not give a more precise estimate of the date, even as NASA reviews a possible change to it. So it was a piece of information that kind of slipped out. I don't think it surprises anybody that has followed SLS, but it's why Crew Dragon's important. It's why Starliner's important. It's why the commercial crew program has to happen. Simply because NASA's been talking. I remember watching Orion safety deployment tests 4 years ago on NASA streams, and it was like, oh, this is right around the corner, and here we are 4 years later, and the first mating of Orion to SLS occurred like 2 weeks ago. Like the very first time they actually put the two craft together physically was 2 weeks ago. So they're saying that it won't launch until 2020, and they're not saying when in 2020, which means they're not willing to say December 2020, which means it's probably not 2020. I would be shocked if it launches in any form. A DM1, a demonstration 1 of SLS goes up next year. We'll see. NASA, please prove me wrong. I'm not down on you at all. I understand that you're working within the limited amount of money that you get, and there's a million things you're trying to do with it. But I don't have confidence that they are able to keep a timeline at all with SLS. So, where are we here? We're at an hour. I am going to take a quick break. I'll be back in a minute. We're going to come back and talk about something that's actually happening tonight in space in a neighborhood near you. It's the 2019 DN asteroid. It's actually going to be relatively close to Earth, but we'll get into that in a second. I'll be right back. You guys stretch your legs, get a drink, go to the bathroom. Just make sure you get up out of your seat for a second. We'll come back. We'll talk about that and whatever's left on the board in just a few minutes. I'm back. Hopefully you are too. If not, hopefully you hear my voice from the bathroom or something. But we're going to move on to 2019 DN. So, there's this asteroid called 2019 DN. 2019 is the name, the number for the year they discovered it in. Let that sink in for a second. It's March 8th, which means in the past, what's that, 67 days? Somewhere in there? That's when they realized this asteroid exists. So let's start there. That's the, cool, okay, they found a new asteroid, great. It will be at its closest point to Earth right around now. And it's not that far away, relatively speaking. So, they found out an asteroid existed this year that's going to be 13 lunar distances away from Earth. That's the best way I can put it into perspective for you. It's if the moon, take the moon's distance, multiply that by 13, that's how close it is. So, we're going to start by where the heck is this thing? Because it's passing this close to us right now. The blue line's us. 2019 DN passed its closest point to Earth not too long ago. That's where it was. This is where it is right now. It got pretty close. The scary thing about this is if you project its orbit forward in time, it will eventually have an Earth intercept. Eventually, on a cosmic level, really close. There's a couple reasons to bring this up. One, just like Ryugu, it has an Earth intercept. Notice it also has 2 Mars intercepts, and those are actually, it missed Mars. It had a Mars intercept, but Mars orbital intercept, but Mars was not in that position then. It's on the intercept line now. That's not where it was then. If it had been there, it would have hit Mars. But there's another chance on this current orbital path for it to hit Mars, but Mars won't be there by then. But this orbit will
Behold, righteousness and zealotry,
with the jokes,
gleaming in the morning sun.
But 2019 DN is seriously passing 13 lunar distances from the Earth, basically right now, and it has that trajectory to intercept Mars orbit. It won't hit Mars, but as this orbit changes, because 2019 DN is a sun orbital asteroid, it's going to go way out, right? It won't exceed Jupiter orbit, and then it'll come back in. And as that orbit changes a little bit, there is an Earth intercept mathematically in its potential future. So, to put it in perspective, the size of the asteroid, and it's 13 lunar distances away, and NASA's best estimate of its size is between 91 and 200 meters wide. It's a pretty big rock. It's not small. 200 meters is big. And for the sake of comparison, for those of you that remember Chelyabinsk, it's this meteor that went across Russia's sky in 2013, produced amazing video, right? That asteroid became a massive fireball that when it hit, the Chelyabinsk meteorite, when it hit, it had the force of 400 kilotons of TNT when it hit the ground. And that asteroid was only 20 meters wide. You're talking a factor of 10 potential increase. So it would be 4,000 kilotons of TNT on impact if, after re-entry, the asteroid turned meteor maintained the same ratio of mass. That impact in 2013 in Russia injured 1,500 people. It blew out windows. And we're going to look at what happened with that impact, just to refresh your brain, because this would have been 10 times worse if it would have hit us, potentially, if it's at its max estimate size. If it's at its 90 estimate size, then it would have been 4 times as bad. I'm going to kick off of this, and I'll show you what Chelyabinsk looked like, if you missed it.
Нихуя себе, это что такое? О, нихуя метеорит, блядь. Ебануться. Нихуя себе.
You can make all the jokes you want, Perm. I don't care.
Я сейчас подойду, подожди.
This was That was the impact. That was the damn thing hitting the ground. Now multiply it by 10. It broke into pieces in the air. But elements of it hit the ground. Bear in mind, no one's ever been killed by a meteorite strike. Yeah, but yes, for absolutely, Perm. Russian dash cams for the win. Look how well lit the night sky got with that flame. Or the twilight sky got with that flame. I mean, I don't know. At some point, I guess some people would go, what are you going to do, you know? If it's Armageddon, what are you going to do? Wow. The amount of light in the sky is phenomenal. And the reason I wanted to compare is because there's if 2019 DN is at its max estimate size, it is 100 times brighter than this potentially, let alone the Force. There's the one at the end of this is actually really cool. Let's hope it stays in space. You can hear the multiple. No, that's continued breakup of the meteorite inbound. It's basically it coming apart and the force of that. That's what the sound is. Yep.
Ебать, а! Что это хуйня? Никит, что это такое? Бомбардировка, нахуй. Артподготовка, блядь.
This is the one. Watch this. This is the inside the building. I think this is the one you're talking about.
А вот Морф неопределенно озадачил. УТВ победил. Как источник информации, Морф оказывается мало интересен. Он может...
That right there is a classy Russian lady. It's just to put it in perspective. One, NASA can watch about 2% of the observable sky. They didn't know about this one until this year. This potentially 10 times worse than that asteroid, which is really passing right by us right now. They didn't know about until within the last 60 so days. Sleep well, everybody. I mean, it wasn't the point of it, but it gives you a moment for thought about what the hell is actually still out there that I mean, obviously lots and lots that we don't know about. Well, as long as Carney stops snoring. Alright, so next on the list. That was 2019 DN. I have two more things I want to talk about. And then we're going to talk about next week's launch schedule. The next thing is Elon Musk. I'll bring up the article so I can read it. But Elon Musk, those of you that follow, this one probably made it onto Twitter. Elon Musk went on the Joe Rogan show. And I'll actually answer your question about Tesla here too, Dustin, while I'm thinking about it. But Elon Musk went on the Joe Rogan show, I don't know, last year sometime. And part of the video was him taking a drag off of a joint or something once. Well, it caused a problem with his security clearance. So the DoD, which SpaceX is looking to have certification for flying military payloads as well, the DoD works with the FBI, and you have to fill out this thing called an SF-81. It's one of two forms that you have to fill out, and that's the short one. That's the lower end one. The other one's, I think, the DN1 or the DS1, which is the longer anal probing questionnaire that asks you what did you think about communism when you were in second grade. But the SF-86, on his initial fill out, Elon Musk indicated that no, I've never smoked or never done drugs, which is the same answer every military recruiter ever tells you to give on that form ever, no matter what you've done. So now they know that's not true, and he's had to resubmit that form. The form actually asked a question in the previous 7 years, but obviously now in the previous 7 years, his answer on the SF-86 is invalid. So they're going to make him redo his clearance, and it's probably more of a, hey, jackass, if you're gonna smoke weed, don't do it in a place that's publicly visible. This segues into something else with Tesla. But it doesn't affect SpaceX's day-to-day operations. Gwen Shotwell is the president of SpaceX. She sees to the day-to-day ops of SpaceX. Even if Musk lost his security clearance, it will not prevent SpaceX from doing business with the DoD. It would prevent Elon Musk from having involvement with those operations if he can't get his security clearance. But it won't stop him or stop SpaceX from moving forward. It's more of a thing with him. But Dustin asked me, I think it was in Discord or on Twitter, I made a tweet a little while ago that basically said, please fanboys, stop asking Elon Musk to talk about Tesla. It's only going to get him into trouble. And it was on Twitter. And the reason I said that was because he had said something about Tesla. And he has to be very careful about what he says about Tesla, because last year he revealed potentially market-altering information in a tweet that didn't go through the eyes of his board. And he was at that time the chairman of that board, but shareholders didn't have the information. And it led to an SEC investigation. Remember, Tesla's a public company. SpaceX is not. And so the ramifications of the investigation from the SEC were that effectively Musk had to step down as chairman of chairman of the board of Tesla. He had to relinquish that title. He could still be involved in working with Tesla, but he can't. He had to remove himself from that position. And the next step was, you can't say things about Tesla publicly in a form like that, like market altering information, without board approval of your communication. So a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, he did it again. He said something about production, prospective production of Tesla, and it violated that agreement with the SEC flat out. I mean, there's no way around it. He needs to shut up about Tesla, period. And people on the internet need to stop asking him about Tesla, because Elon Musk is a super nerd and he wants to talk about it. And I don't fault him for that. And he's kind of like, he just doesn't play within the market rule system that exists, and it turns into an insider trading thing. The slap on the wrist he got was relatively nothing, and it was more of a, hey, don't do it again. Well, he did it again, and now it's like, just stop talking about Tesla publicly. Keep yourself out of trouble. But that's what that was all about, Dustin. It was just about Elon Musk and his inability to put tape over his mouth when he talks about Tesla. But the incident with Joe Rogan and smoking the weed on video also led to some questioning of his ability to steer the company publicly. It didn't weigh into the SEC investigation, but it is weighing into his security clearance investigation, and that's why I brought that one up today, because it was relatively recent information with respect to Musk. And will he get a security clearance? I think he will. I mean, politics aside, there are people in the current administration who lied on their SF-86 that had to resubmit their SF-86s, and they have security clearances. So the precedent is that if you make the correction to the form, you keep your clearance. I have known people who have had to redo aspects of both levels of their clearance investigations and have still obtained a clearance, so I don't think it's going to foul them up. But most people have not had to undergo a two-layer FBI background and NSA background investigation to obtain a clearance, so I can understand why the news is like, whoa, my goodness, will Musk lose his clearance? Probably not. The answer is probably not. Not if they set aside his celebrity and follow the same standard they have followed for pretty much every instance of this I've ever heard of. All right, so that's Musk. That is SpaceX and security clearances. And the last thing news-wise I have on the board is the CSA, Canadian Space Agency, and Lunar Gateway. I added this late because the news came out late. CSA doesn't do a whole lot in space. They're most well known for producing Canadarm, or however you want to pronounce it. I pronounce it Canadarm, not Canadarm, or however some people like to play with the word. But Canadarm is the big thing that Canada has put on the shuttle. They've put on the International Space Station. But of late, Canada hasn't done a whole lot with space. There is a Canadian astronaut on the station right now with Anne McLean. But they came out with a 22-page strategy memo this past week and made a big announcement that they are committing to the following. The Canada government will try to cut regulatory red tape that has prevented the space industry from moving forward with projects with Canada. The centerpiece was a commitment to NASA's Lunar Gateway project that covers financial contributions to cover a 24-year period of development of a new generation of Canadarm for that project. So with that announcement, Canada becomes the first nation to formally latch together with NASA to produce Lunar Gateway. And for those of you that don't know what Lunar Gateway is, imagine ISS around the moon. But more than just what ISS does, where it's crewed doing microgravity experiments. The idea with Lunar Gateway is it's also going to be, for lack of a better way to describe it, a rest stop / gas station to the moon. They're going to have craft designed to go to Lunar Gateway, refuel, go down to the surface, come back up, redock with Lunar Gateway, and go back down again. So reusability of the craft is a part of the design that SpaceX is pursuing. But it's also that NASA very recently put out a public request for corporations to submit manned lunar lander designs that will work with Lunar Gateway. And the reusability of the craft was one of the components that has to be met. So I would say that for those of us who were born after 1969 or the end of the Apollo program in 72, we never got to see people walking on the moon or Mars. And I've always sat here and said, am I ever going to see it in my lifetime? Am I going to be in that generation that just misses out on the awesome part of space? Hopefully I live long enough. NASA right now wants to have boots on the moon by 2028. That's what this Lunar Gateway, the request for the development, a 10-year development of a landing craft. Now bear in mind that Kennedy announced that going to the moon after Al Shepard was in space for 15 minutes, and no one knew anything about orbital mechanics at the time. We're getting about the same amount of time frame from NASA to do what we do with what we already know and effectively repeat the feat with a reusable craft. I think that's very doable. We'll see if I think the public part of the partnership will come through with flying colors. I think the biggest question mark is, will Lunar Gateway be in place by then? Because that's the thing that we've only done a few times. We've only put a station in orbit around Earth a couple times. Skylab, Mir, ISS. Putting a station in position around the moon and maintaining it with supply missions that go to the moon is more complicated than the relative ease of availability of launch windows to ISS, which come around pretty much every couple days. Launch windows to the moon will be a little bit, and launch windows to the moon that intercept a Lunar Gateway trajectory are going to be fewer and farther between. So they have to get those resupply missions right, and they're going to be like they were in The Martian, where NASA likes to overplan everything. So it's going to be one of those situations where the projection is 30 days worth of food, they're going to send 60 because just in case they blow the mission, they're going to make sure that there's enough on there. But can NASA pull that off in the next 9 years and have a functioning Lunar Gateway in place for the reusable craft to use and land on the moon? we'll see. I'm really hopeful. Building this station is not as complicated to me as getting SLS in orbit, because we've built the station, right? It's modular construction. It's just doing modular construction around the moon. We can do that. Like I said, the launch windows become tighter, but it's not something we haven't done. Turning into a gas station is something we haven't done, but that's not that hard either. Assuming that all of the agencies and companies involved use the compatible cross-feeding systems, compatible docking systems, which I'm sure they will. I really see that as being something that will get done. But pay attention to Lunar Gateway, because as you see news about Lunar Gateway, that directly corresponds to news about returning to the moon with people on it. And that's awesome. But that ends what I had to talk about. I did want to do one correction that I talked about. Well, not a correction. It was a change in mission plan. When we were doing these Crew Dragon launch last week, I stated that NASA, SpaceX, were going to use the NASA standard docking mechanism, which was last used by Atlantis in 2011. It turns out they didn't dock there. They changed that, and they landed, or they docked at the Internet IDA-2, which is the International Docking Adapter 2. That is where Crew Dragon latched on to ISS this week, so they did not reuse the same position that Atlantis used. It wasn't a mistake. In the pre-launch materials stated they were using the NASA standard docking adapter, but it still was the same automated dock that I described. So, questions, anything you guys want to ask about that I've talked about at length and you didn't want to interrupt me about, please feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer it. Or crickets from chat. So we're going to do one more thing. Actually, I have to do one thing real quick in the Big Top Outlaws Discord. Those of you who are patrons, there was a giveaway going on in the sub channel this week, and I will show you what they're going to get once I find where I put them. Where did I put them? I had a whole stack of them. Where did they go? That's not good news, because I had them sitting here yesterday. You know what? I'll show you on my bag, because I have copies of them on my bag. So, I put my earbud back in because I leaned away too far. They're in this apartment somewhere. So, what I have for giveaways this coming month, I have 4 of each, as you will see on my bag, these pins. This one is the shuttle, commemorating shuttle launches. This one next to it is commemorating the Apollo program. They're going to have to be able to fill the tank at the Lunar Gateway, Dustin. It's the only way it fits the mission profile is to be able to have reuse craft, which means they're going to have to go down, expend fuel to land, expend fuel to leave, refuel, expend fuel to land, expend fuel to leave. Oregon won't let you fill your own. I remember you saying that, and that's so ridiculous. It's just like, what the heck are you talking about? I'll bring up some better pictures of those buttons real quick. Let me go and grab them out of the sub chat channel. So, let me open that, and let me open that. I'll take you over here and show them to you real quick. So, as always, patrons get first crack, and it's either that button or that button. And I'm about to call the raffle in chat in Discord. So Lunar Gateway full-time crew, I would imagine so. They'd have to change out expedition crews like they do with ISS. So let me do this real quick, and we'll figure out who wins that raffle. 2 days, you guys had plenty of time. And I typed the command wrong. So the winner of the patron raffle in Discord is Mads. Mads isn't here right now, but she'll see it. She just got pinged in Discord. She will get her first pick of the buttons. And that's actually good news, because I can just send both to her in a single package, because I have something else I'm sending to her. So, on that note, I have now 7 more buttons to give away. She'll select one of the 2, and we'll start giving those away on launch streams or when the crowd in here is big enough. But let's talk about launches. Next week, we have Expedition 59, launching from Baikonur, and I had a Russian coworker correct me on my pronunciation of it this week because I was saying it wrong, and he corrected me. I was using an L sound, and there's not an L sound in there. It's just Baikonur. So from Baikonur Cosmodrome, this Thursday, there is a launch at around 7 p.m. It's a little bit before 7 p.m. if I'm not wrong. We'll check that real quick. The schedule has it in Discord. It is actually a 7:14 p.m. Eastern Time launch. The stream for that launch coverage will start at 6:30. That is taking 1 American astronaut and 2 Russian cosmonauts to the ISS to join the crew of 3 that is already there. That will form Expedition 59. They will live on the station for 60 days, I think. No, 6 months. They'll live together for, I think, 3 months. And then Anne McClain and the other 2 astronauts will come down, and then 3 astronauts will remain, and that will be Expedition 60. So Expedition 59 launch is this Thursday. Stream coverage starts at 6:30. The launch itself is at 7:14 p.m. I was originally planning on covering the Delta 5 launch that was supposed to be on Wednesday, but it slipped late today, and it will not launch until like 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday night. I wouldn't mind doing both launches. It really depends on filling the gap of time in between. That would make a very long stream. It would probably go until 11.
Send this one to journey elsewhere.
Dustin, enjoy the grocery store.
For we have need of sterner stock.
I'm not going to list it on the schedule yet because it slipped once already, and I'm not going to commit to anything regarding that launch until it solidifies. Right now, it's no earlier than 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday night. So, hour and a half is pretty good for what is effectively a visual podcast on what is going on in space. I don't have anything else really to cover. I'm not planning on playing a game tonight. I really just wanted to dedicate this time to creating a VOD for the people that couldn't be here, but also discussing with the people that wanted to be present what's going on with the missions that we're doing. I really hope you enjoyed the format. I hope you found it informative. Any week that we do not have a launch, where I'm not in a position to spend a half hour ahead of a launch talking about this stuff, I plan to do one of these shows. So please, I guess I've told you before, I fuel off of feedback. So if it's enjoyable, I'll do it. I enjoy doing it. I like producing it. I love space. I love the fact that there are people interested enough to be here. So thank you very much again for giving me 90 minutes of your time tonight. I will continue to try to improve the format, improve how I present it. Please drop me suggestions for things you'd like to see. Actually, drop them into the suggestion box channel. If there's something I'm not covering with respect to space, or questions that you have, or something you want me to elaborate on or expand upon more, please let me know. I guess I'll show you. This is my notes for tonight, just so you guys can see the work that I did do. This is me and all the links and everything that I threw together, the quotes and the things I was reading from. It's 3-4 pages long. It helps me key through things to kind of prompt myself, but I can definitely go longer than this if there's interest. But anyway, I'm open to suggestions to making it more enjoyable for everybody. I definitely want to keep doing it. I know my dad watches the VODs now, which is actually kind of cool. And again, credit to my mom. My mom sewed all these patches on my flight suit in a day. The patches came from the same company that produces them for NASA, from the commercial side. I'm really stoked about it. The only thing that's not here is this. This is actually an old Air Force nameplate for me, which is why I've kind of covered the bottom part with tape, because I don't want to reveal that information on stream. Come touch my vessel, Daniel, thanks for the follow, man. But we'll be doing this more. Check Twitter, check Discord. Oh, me and Dustin are both metalheads, man. So it's just, yeah, gotta be the way it is. They gotta be loud and obnoxious and metal. What was I saying? Yes, I have heard of Black Dahlia Murder. My big thing this year, I get to say it again, everybody. I got Iron Maiden tickets. You are 2 of those things. Thank you, Perm. 161 days to the Iron Maiden concert. Me and Dustin, while I'm wrapping up here, me and Dustin met on Discord well over a year ago. Or not Discord, Mixer, well over a year ago. I was actually hosted into his channel by someone who I don't watch anymore. And I have like 600 some hours watching Dustin every morning. We're very different people, but he's also one of my very good friends. And I'll say the same thing about Perm, too. I spent a lot of time, what was it, 488 hours I've watched Perm stream. No, Yomega. I watch when you stream, which is like once every 14 days. But Perm and Dustin, I spend a lot of time with them. And Yomega, too. I spend a lot of time trolling Perm with Yomega, but I like how close-knit our community is. I like how we're friends, that it's not just somebody who sits in a channel and talks. That, I spend time playing games. Like, tomorrow morning, I'm playing Far Cry New Dawn co-op with Dustin at 7:30 on his channel. I've been playing Anthem with Yomega and Perm off hours, late at night, whenever they want to play, or, Perm invites me. And I love the fact that this community, I don't need it to be 4,000 followers. I like it to be 20 people that show up and enjoy talking through stuff together, or watching people goof together, or watching Dustin and Perm's bad aim together. From the produce section. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for tonight. Again, thanks for watching. Again, this is going to be called Course Correction. That's the name of the show. That's how it'll appear on YouTube. That's how it'll be advertised on Twitter. Let's see who's out there to host, if anybody, from the Outlaws. That is this button, Team Live, or this command. Alti and Mork. You know what? We have not hosted Mork in a long, long time, because we tend to stream in parallel. Got your cucumber. Thanks, Dustin, for the information. So we're going to take it over to Mork. I don't know what he's playing yet. Actually, let's go have a look at what Mork is playing. Dink. He is playing Divinity Original Sin. I believe that is a co-stream with Captain E-Rock. So we'll get you over there. Divinity Original Sin 2 is a turn-based strategy RPG adventure. It's a very long game, but we'll get you over to Mork. Say hi to him from BOSA and the Outlaws. And again, guys, thanks for being here. I hope you had a great time. I hope you learned some stuff. I hope it was good, informative. And again, check me out in the Discord if you want to add suggestions on presentation or information, or if I said something wrong, and I'll correct it. But we'll talk to you later. Have a good night, guys. And I will see you probably tomorrow morning in Dustin's stream.